Hello, thank you all for coming. For today's sermon, we share a passage by our late teacher, Gerson. He always managed to put into words what we could never quite say ourselves. Now, let us begin. We shall never know the pieces of the prophecy lost to time. But was everything important truly written down in those words? Myself, I see a blank page as an invitation to write. And you, my dear, I see a story lit up in your eyes, burning bright, burning black, burning up everything. So how do you think it all ends? No, how do you want it to end? You know, don't you? At this late hour with the bells ringing out their justice, you choose eternity. As of me recording this, chapters 3 and 4 of Deltarune have just been released, and boy were we not prepared for them. Many of the patterns we noticed in the first two chapters just weren't, and most of the wild predictions we made about the story going forwards were surprisingly tame in comparison to the actual result. It's made talking about this game pretty difficult. If a character is hiding something, we can't say we know who they really are. So thank the angel one person is willing to wear her heart on her sleeve. Hi, I'm Dots. I'm resident Cosmic Horror Enemy number 195 in this batshit crazy fandom, and I'm here to join the dog pile of theorists trying to give their own 2 cents on what Toby Fox's divine vision is actually trying to say. Today, I want to talk about Susie, my favorite character in this game and quite possibly one of my favorite fictional characters in general, because I find her character arc to be a lot more interesting and well defined than most people give credit. If you're interested in that kind of thing, feel free to stick around. Maybe I'll get a prize at the end, who knows. Now, without further ado, your choices don't matter. That's the lesson Susie gives to us the first time we meet her. She's nothing more than our school bully at this point in the story, and this line serves to reinforce that. She's cold, she's antagonistic, she doesn't want anyone to be her friend, and most of us don't want to be hers. We're just stuck with her for a school project, and she's keen to let us know that. Her demeaning attitude makes the player want anything but the reality of her statement, and for her to get her comeuppance. Then that comeuppance arrives. Susie is stuck in an alien environment made just as vulnerable as we are, and while she's still watching over us, she's somewhat reliant on her guidance for her own survival. That is, if we don't take her precious time. Entering the luminescent castle town, it's unclear what role she might take in the story. Is she simply a rival we're meant to overcome, or is there more behind her tough exterior? Ralsei's prophecy brands Susie as a hero, just as much as ourselves, but hesitant to take a very generic call to action seriously, she declines the role. As she puts it, she's not the hero type. It's in that response that we begin to understand Susie's nature, antithesis. Where the story takes her, she will go the opposite way. Where we expected some amount of freedom at the start of the game, she is the one to deny us of such. Susie is stubborn and independent, and in as small scale of an environment as the classroom, her nature renders her the bad guy. But what happens when a real bad guy debuts? Yeah, you forgot Lancer was supposed to be intimidating, didn't you? I mean, he was always comedic first, antagonistic second, but given how little we knew about the Dark World at this point, Lancer was more or less a representative of the unknown dangers that lied ahead. In particular, his dad. He and the other Darkners are initially nothing more than obstacles to Susie, but Lancer's attempt at villainy begins to rub off on her. Here she meets someone who finds solace in a similar role, who can speak on her level and even speaks positively of her on that level. And that puts Susie's role as antithesis into question. To what extent does Susie want to push other people away? As of now, she stays with the fun game, if only out of necessity. It's our job to keep her on a leash, to prevent her from hurting enemies so that we can carry out the intended pacifist route. And no one is more keen on reminding us of that than Ralsei. Ralsei is the thesis in this analogy, a vehicle of the prophecy, the game as it's meant to unfold. His initial message to us is that we have control over our actions and should choose peace as a means of obtaining the best outcome. So it makes sense that, especially in this chapter, the two are diametrically opposed, representing two sides of a greater argument. Inevitably, their personalities will come to blows. Crossing the Great Board, Susie's stubbornness is proven a detriment when her refusal to act almost gets the party killed. Ralsei calls her out for being a bad hero and, still seeing no point in being a hero at all, Susie joins Lancer's side instead. She's finally become the rival we all expected her to be. But in seeing her spend time with Lancer, the first person she's genuinely opened up to, we see new sides to her character. She's a foodie, unconventionally so. She likes to play pranks and is generally fun-loving. And she helps taking Lancer very seriously, valuing our recent friendship very strongly. What we begin to see is a passionate, adventurous, loyal, outgoing individual, one who checks all the boxes of a strong, heroic figure. And yet, it stands in contrast with the closed-off bully we met in the light world. Why is that so? Well, we might have gotten the answer vicariously through Lancer's backstory. Because the king forced his subjects to support Lancer, rather than actually spending time with his own son, Lancer has more or less been to himself for most of his life, finding solace in his role as an antagonist. He lacks purpose and only starts to feel satisfied around the Lightners, the first people to actually care for him, and Susie empathizes with that. Susie pushes other people away because she's been pushed away. She's an outsider, for reasons we don't fully understand, and because of that she's excluded from activities and relationships. In reaction, Susie tells herself she's no good at what she's excluded from, and slumps back into the bully persona that's been placed on her. It's a self-defeating cycle, and if she continues to isolate herself, it will only get worse. Sure, Susie's rebellious streak is inherent, and her tendency to part from the norm shouldn't be looked down on, but her proclivity for independence gets in the way of what she actually wants. That's best demonstrated in her reaction to Lancer's betrayal. Interpreting yet another friendship as fake, she lashes out, reverting to the Lightners versus Darkners mentality that King's Dominion has enforced. And she almost goes through with killing him, on the notion that Lancer is nothing more than an outsider. But she stops, because deep down it's the outsiders she cares for the most. Lancer admits to his worry that she and King will kill each other, and in response Susie promises to spare an enemy that she hasn't even met, for the sake of someone close to them. It's in this decision that Susie's initial statement becomes refined. Susie realizes that, despite what others may have her believe, her choices do matter. In fact, everyone's choices matter. But because they all matter, we have to account for everyone's autonomy. We sacrifice some amount of independence to do that, but we gain some amount of love and purpose in return. From this point onward, Susie has genuine investment in saving the Dark World. She collaborates with us and Rousey because she's found her own motivation, and because of that she has her own perspectives on how to solve problems, making the party stronger. Susie is the one person here who acts on her own accord, and in working with her, we as the player discover the same kind of truth about autonomy that she learned through Lancer. We're not rivals anymore, we're equals. We recognize Susie as a person in her own right, and that recognition is essential for understanding Deltarune's themes. Arriving at the fountain, King tests us on our ability to feel for Darkners, scolding us for the discarding of childhood toys. He doesn't see anyone as capable of change, capable of growing beyond their perceived purpose, and encourages Susie to show his son the monster she really is. But Susie's past that. She recognizes what true purpose feels like, and so she takes the moral high ground, saving our lives. Through Lancer's revolution, an action that Susie puts her faith into, that moral high ground is what saves the day. By now, Susie is indisputably our friend. She puts the rest the quandary between her and Rousey, opting for an in-between stance on how to interact with others. Be guarded, but take opportunities. And with that, her fixed mindset begins to fade away. Susie is a hero, not just because she defeated King, but because she's overcome her internal struggle. And it's because her story is laden with internal struggle that her capacity to be our friend is so profound. Returning to the light world, Susie takes her leave. But the transformation of her character has just begun. And boy is it about to go places. Susie's experiences in the Dark World were instrumental in getting her to leave her shell. But is she ready to apply her newfound trust to her normal life? Chapter 2 is fun first and foremost, and that fun helps reinforce Susie's appreciation for adventure and aptitude for personal growth. But her interactions with a certain someone will free that growth from an isolated, purely personal state to an interpersonal one. Introducing Noel, everyone's favorite Christmas-themed star student girl next door with a sweet personality, a decade-long bond with her main protagonist, an penchant for Easter egg hunting, an inability to say no due to crippling people-pleasing tendencies and learned helplessness issues, a tragic backstory involving a missing sister, sick dad, and abusive helicopter mom, susceptibility to manipulation, eldritch superpowers, and enough cast references in her theme music to kill an adult cow. Noel is a lot, and her story extends far beyond Susie's. But isn't it interesting then that of all the people Noel is associated with, Susie seems to be the most important? There's good reason for that. But to see why, we need to cover the broad strokes of their relationship. Right out the gate, Susie seems pretty oblivious to Noel's advances. She's preoccupied on the adventure, childishly so. But in her mind, there's good reason to be that way. Susie doesn't see the light world as a place where she can express herself. She still feels like everyone's afraid of her up here, and Noel's shyness is misinterpreted as validation of that sentiment. This insecurity leads Susie to be protective of the dark world, a place for her and Chris to be who they want to be without fear of social expectations. Sure, yesterday's adventure was dangerous, but it wasn't anything they couldn't handle. So when Noel is held hostage by Queen, she becomes a burden, something to be fought over. Susie becomes protective of her without knowing the real her, and while that never becomes a major issue, it prevents her burgeoning protagonist from forming a significant relationship on her own. Susie isn't ready to be vulnerable with someone until she sees the vulnerability of others. Thankfully, vulnerability becomes the order of the day. First, it manifests in Rousey teaching healing magic. Susie opens up to the idea of learning something new from someone she already respects, and Rousey is plenty kind enough to support her, even if the results are currently iffy. Then we get to Birdley's confession, of his insecurities about his intelligence and his reliance on being the best. Susie is the one to give him a little therapy, and while it doesn't yield the best result, it does yield some amount of affection from one of the more popular kids in town, building her confidence. Where Susie's social anxieties are really dispelled, however, is in the Ferris wheel date. Convinced that this is all a dream, Noel feels more comfortable saying what she feels about Susie, and determined to save her, Susie is willing to put the time into hearing what she has to say. As it turns out, Noel is fond of Susie because she's not afraid to speak her mind. She's not part of the scary world of social pressures and expectations, of liars and masks. Susie is determined to be herself, and Noel needs someone like that to support her, to inspire her in being the same way. Likewise, Susie needs someone to support, someone she can build a purpose around, someone she can truly be loyal to. They complete each other, and inspire each other to be themselves. As of right now, that's felt in the laughs they share. But even now, their relationship is rife with potential. It's from this interaction that Noel finds the courage to stand up to Queen, saving the day, and Susie finds confidence in being with others, subtly inviting Noel to future adventures should they emerge. Another adventure has proven itself beneficial to Susie's development. But to what extent is Susie willing to hold on to her newfound values? When Toriel invites her to a sleepover, Susie is surprisingly comfortable with Toriel's presence, for reasons we'll get into soon. But more pertinently, her shock at how nice the Dreamer home is and dismissal of a need to contact her parents tells us something deeper about Susie's past. She has an insecure home life, and as evident by her desire to bring the darkness into the light world, she still sees nothing good in where she came from. She's reliant on the dark worlds to feel happy, and that's soon to come to a head. Before we continue, let's paint a picture of who I believe Susie to be. She's adventurous, craving the excitement of uncertain adventure. She's a free spirit, wanting to be apart from the norm whether by her own nature or as pressured by the sentiments of others. She's loyal to those that accept her. She's invested in things she can change. And at her most fundamental, Susie represents the drive to wander off the beaten path. So let's see how far off the beaten path we can go. Tonight, the dark world approaches. Susie should be concerned at how, yet again, she's been forced into unknowable danger, but she can't help but be excited for it, especially as it's her chance to invite Rousey to the light world, to do homework for us, to watch movies with us, to go to the festival with us. Little does she know how hard she's pushing Rousey to unveil the unfortunate truth, but in time, she pries open Pandora's box. We can create worlds in our minds, people and places resemblant of, but distinct from reality. It's the power of imagination, plain and simple. And that power grows where real things can't be perceived, between lines on a page, at the corner of an empty map, in a room cloaked in darkness. What we imagine is limited to our subconscious. But what if it wasn't? What if a space could become so intangible, so dark, that there is nothing left but the imagined? In this world, the imagined becomes material. The implicit becomes the explicit. The dark world, then, is a fantasy brought to life, its residents illusions of an imaginative mind, fueled by the uncertainty of darkness. They're objects in real life, even Rousey. And because of that, it's hard to tell if who you're talking to is even real. Or at least that's what Rousey believes. Susie is understandably skeptical of everything she's just heard. I mean, would a person who isn't real even be able to say something like that? And how could someone just invalidate their entire life in a single statement, much less the lives of everyone you represent? It goes against everything she learned about respecting the autonomy of others, against her fundamental desire for freedom. But it's more than that, isn't it? She's just been told to get some real friends, as if the ones she's made over the past 2 days didn't matter. The amount of investment Susie puts into each relationship she gains makes any instance of a bond broken a deep and persisting wound. So when Rousey drops a statement like that, it simply can't be adjusted to. Susie is able to ignore the not real part for the sake of their friendship, but with her view of the dark world soured, she's in dire need of an outlet for her frustrations. Now's the perfect time, then, for someone to cheer her up. Mike, the VHS, please. Yeah, I had to play the full thing, you know I had to. I am obsessed with his charismatic ball of anxiety, and I will yap about him for your entertainment. Tenno's entire existence is to make people happy, so it fits for him to have the energy of a puppy dog and the sauce of a cheap 90s mascot platformer. His over-the-top personality, coupled with the hyper-scripted nature of his game show, only angers Susie at first. But when Rousey offers to hang out the way they wanted to through Tenno's show, she sees an opportunity to take her mind off of everything that's stressing her out. She sees an escape from real life. With her good graces, Tenno whisks us along on what he hopes will be an unforgettable adventure. Shining lights, catchy music, all that sort of jazz. And the games are made fun through his charm and surprising authenticity. But most importantly, his games give the party, and in particular Susie, the freedom to be themselves. Like, sure, Susie's worn drums will probably tank our score in the Guitar Hero minigame, but we couldn't care less, because she's having fun, and so we're having fun, and Tenno gets that. He allows for that, because Tenno really is the quality game show host he made himself out to be. The more you're into the games, the better you'll do, and the more access to fun things you can receive. It's a cycle perfectly designed to maximize enjoyment, and with certain special challenges, Chris and Susie get experiences designed just for them. In particular, the Susiezilla Special, the perfect place for her to live out her wildest dreams. Susie goes out of her way to thank Tenno for the fun she's been having and for the fun Rousey gets to share with her. And Tenno is over the moon to hear someone truly appreciate him for the first time in a while. There's a genuine bond growing. But how long can it last? The boards keep coming, and we continue to try new things, but inevitably, the well runs dry. Enthusiasm falters. The energy to play has been used up, and our attention shifts back towards a dark fountain that still needs closing. Without a break from the chaos, exhaustion is setting in. We've had our dessert. Now here comes the sugar crash. Susie leads the charge to tell Tenno this next game will be their last. But when she finds him, she overhears something she wasn't meant to. Tenno gets anxious about it, but doesn't tell her what it was. He's hiding something. And if there's anything Susie doesn't like, it's when someone isn't being themselves. Exploring the studio, she searches for a sinister truth. Yet in doing so, we get a chance to hear what she's really thinking about. Susie isn't too surprised about the unreality of the Dark Worlds. She always felt they were too good to be true, and she admits that she shouldn't have needed them to be friends with us. Yet she can't ascertain how untrue they could really be, especially as the matter seems to weigh over Rousey more than it weighs over her. Admittedly, what Susie cares about is that she can feel from her time in this place, and how that carries over. But as she's beginning to understand, a fantasy made real is more than a one-way relationship. Reality slaps Susie in the face when she realizes Toriel's been in the Dark World this whole time, held captive by Tenno as a means of continuing the games forever. Realizing his cover's been blown, Tenno segues to the next board in a state of desperation. But the game is over. The show has gotten old. And when told that, the host finally drops his act. Tenno takes full control now, demonstrating a power over the narrative that he's been holding back the whole time. We're constrained into situations where we have to give him praise. If we don't, he gets angrier. If we do, it's unsatisfactory due to how forced our response is. As we progress, he seems to enter a manic state at times. But just as our energy gets used up, so does his. He just gets bitter. Bitter at why Asriel left for college, at why Chris won't smile anymore, at all the fighting we have to do just for the praise to still mean nothing. All the fighting, just like the family used to before they split up. At its lowest, it's evident Tenno was just as fond of escaping from reality as we are. But when his psyche is at its lowest, so is his guard, and so the escape to reality begins. Tenno calls all hands on deck, and as we push our way through the studio, we become heroes against an oppressive system. As with King and Queen beforehand, our efforts to recruit the Darkners helps break down the hierarchy, and as its ruler gets increasingly desperate to catch us, even his closest allies begin to turn away. First Ram quits, then the Pippins raid his shop, then his lackeys leave, then his second-in-commands, and then Mike. Then Mike. It's unclear why, but when Mike leaves, it's as if his conscience has abandoned him. He's gone too far, and he's beginning to recognize it, even reflecting on his failed attempts to learn technology and be more than yesterday's pastime. Tenno's world is falling apart. The studio becomes empty and dusty, a world foreign to itself, and its petrified denizens reflect that. But even as the last man standing, the Lord of Screens refuses to give up on his dream, the only thing he has left. He confronts us one last time, for one last game, where our will to help was greater than his will to hurt, and in the end, our hope for the future burns brighter than the distant past. So here Tenno remains, at the mercy of the Lightners, left with nothing. He could have mourned his evil plan, and we could have rejected the escapist fantasy entirely. That's how most would have expected this story to end. But there's more to this old TV than that. He tells us how happy he was when he was useful, when the family was together. He made people smile, and that gave him a purpose in life. Better yet, he was a symbol of their unbreakable bond. But when the bond broke, he became unused, nothing but a relic of what once was, and now he's soon to be thrown out. He didn't make the best use of his farewell tour, sure, but Tenno just wanted to be wanted. And if we have a hard time letting go of the past, doesn't it make sense that a piece of the past itself wouldn't want to be let go of either? It becomes clear then, doesn't it? We can't just discard the past. If we want to be better people, we need to reconcile with what we've left behind. Tenno, then, needs to be consoled. But to do so requires rationalizing the possibility of being thrown away. Rousey holds to his belief that all Darkners become obsolete eventually, by virtue of their reliance on their purpose to exist. According to him, it's best to look back on how well one served their Lightners, to keep one's thoughts in the warm glow of the past. Yet his words fail to connect with Tenno. It seems Rousey's thoughts on his own existence are quite different from the rest of his people. Then Susie chimes in. Having learned to accept her normal life, it was Susie's turn to be the teacher. She pries into the conversation with a very different perspective. The perspective that you don't have to take being thrown away. She challenges Tenno's preconceptions of inescapable suffering, and fully recognizing his personhood, she defends her claim with the story of her own life. Swallowing her fears, Susie lets herself be vulnerable to someone, fittingly to an outcast like her. And in turn, we get to see the origin of her identity for the very first time. Apologies for playing the full thing, but I wanted Susie to speak for herself. At her core, she wants to be part of something. A unique part that stands out from the whole, but a part that's needed for its uniqueness. She wants purpose, just as much as the Darkners do. So she understands why they feel that way. And understanding Tenno's plight, she's able to come up with a creative solution. Sure, Toriel might not want a TV anymore, but someone in town just might. She offers to look for that person, to take time out of her life to do so. And because of her offer, for the first time in ages, Tenno feels hope again. Ultimately, Susie is the one to provide the moral lesson, even changing Rousey's mind to some extent. Of course, Rousey has his own reasons to think the way he does, for reasons we'll again get into soon. But I find it interesting that Susie is turning to surpass us as the main character, as Chris becomes his own beast. Susie is the one to incite change, to heal a scarred world, due to her role as antithesis. She breaks the narrative so they can move in a new direction, and because of that, she's able to save those left behind. Susie can save her world from a doomed story because she challenges the story maker. Her skills will be tested when the story maker challenges her. Tenno drops to the ground, mortally injured. Susie rushes forward to find his attacker, and there they are, the Roaring Knight, the maker of the Dark Worlds. Everyone takes their positions, and the fight is over as soon as it's begun. The Knight wipes the floor with us, almost taking Toriel from us. She ends up taking Undyne instead to the bunker at the far side of town. But still, this is no longer a fantasy. From this point onwards, this is a matter of life and death. It's all been building up to this. With our biggest players all on the board, it's time for our heroes to truly cement their role in the narrative. All the development Susie's gone through, to care for others, to accept herself, to embrace her reality and to change it how she sees fit. All of it has coalesced into a leader. And as we have yet to see, all of it may take the story of Deltarune in directions we never could have possibly imagined. But for now, a bit of respite. Depending on how well you treated the Darkners last night, Susie may have the opportunity to fix Tenno, allowing her to make do on her promise. Additionally, she spends time with Chris, notably a calming presence even with the player's influence weighing heavy over Chris's mind. In fact, this chapter reinforces how good of a friend Susie can be when she's not afraid to be all of herself. Toriel invites her to Saturday Mass, something she's initially hesitant about, but the thought of being close to the bunker, and possibly a hint to opening it, is enough to persuade her. And it's in the church that something strange becomes evident. Hometown's faith, as sung by the choir, is based off of the prophecy that Rousey gave us in Chapter 1. The prophecy that Susie is directly a part of. Her and Chris are attending a ceremony all about them, and they're too distracted rummaging through Chris's pockets to notice. Even still, Susie recognizes the townsfolk of particular importance to their adventure. Pulling reference from the bunker's access code, she infers a connection between the pine tree and the holiday residence, and asks Noel if she can hang out at her house. Of course, in doing so, she's getting closer with Noel, and in the real world no less. But she's also getting closer to learning the tragedy that made her adventures. The search takes some time. Chris is busy playing cat and mouse to reserve the night's secrets. But in the meantime, Susie and Noel share their experiences, and find they have more in common than they thought. The feelings they shared on the Ferris wheel date can now fully materialize, and they culminate in an invitation to the festival, though with Carol's arrival, we're once again shown how new to the town Susie still is. In fact, Susie's in a weird place regarding her relationship with hometown. This is the place she's destined to protect, the place whose history she will become entrenched in. Yet her role in it still has yet to be defined. At the moment, Noel remains her bridge to the social side of town. But as evident by her obliviousness in church, the next step of her development will be learning of the narrative the entire community is built on. Leaving the holiday home with limited success, Susie assumes there's nothing more we can do for now, but when a dark fountain appears at the church, a new mission reveals itself. A mission to face the night head on, venturing right into the thick of its creation. And so we enter the House of the Prophecy. The atmosphere screams elegance and serenity, a proper resting place for the heart of all things, though sensing something disturbing at its epicenter, Susie can only describe the place as creepy. So what could be lying in wait? Ascending the staircase, we discover but a glimpse of what the sanctuary is capable of. The first of many scriptures telling us how our story is supposed to end. The fates are varied in their nature. Some are comical, others are dead serious. But their nature, and the nature of those who live among them, tell us a lot about how concepts of past and future should be perceived in this universe. Take, for example, the Lord of Screens cleaved red by Blade. This refers to Tenno's death, except it only mentions his injury, with the implication of a permanent dismantling. We can change the outcome of Tenno's story, even if the broad strokes are unaffected. Or take the philosophers, who venerate their ancestors and the lives they must have had. In a mirrored world, which we'll get to later, those ancestors worship the philosophers in the same way, yet neither are particularly different from the other. Details like these paint a picture of time as interpretable, concrete in its fundamentals, but variable by virtue of one's perspective, almost as unreal as the Dark World themselves, a blank page waiting to be written on. But we'll need someone truly special to make sense of the narrative in its entirety, because at the moment, our usual guide isn't doing a good job at it. Rousey's version of the prophecy seems abridged, and he insists on finding something in the library, yet pensive to tell anyone what he's looking for. If there's something we and Susie don't know, it's being kept from us, and right now that lack of guidance leads us struggling to find our way through the dark. Thankfully, a familiar face rises to the occasion. A writer, a historian, a mentor, a ghost. There's a lot of ways we can describe Gerson from the get-go, but for Susie, he's just nobody at all. Gerson only hints at his importance to her by feigning ignorance, confused at the idea of a Darkner. And from there he acts weak and unassuming, much to her annoyance, despite the abilities he seems to possess. Gerson's playing a known archetype, sure, but more fascinatingly, he uses a facade to reveal the path ahead, guiding Susie in the most unconventional way possible. To that end, Gerson seems particularly focused in teaching Susie. But why? Well, we may get more of an answer as his teaching methods become more overt. After the Jackenstein fight, Susie's in a position to heal their newfound recruit, but when Rousey takes over, Susie simply backs away. She still gives up on what she doesn't believe herself to be good at, or so it seems. Then Gerson shows up, eggs her on, and puts her in just the right position to heal Jackenstein where he truly needed it. Susie made an out-of-the-box decision, and so proved her worth. And all Gerson did was set up the dominoes. Therein lies the method to his madness. Cause and effect. Gerson is able to understand things from all different perspectives, determining different headspaces, different conditions, and what might they lead to if they were to interact. I see it as an extension of his writing abilities, of his propensity to review and revise the narrative. You see the beats, and you line everything up to give them the best possible flow to make the best impact. But for Susie, it's simply a magic trick. As she puts it, for once in her life, she didn't feel stupid for trying something, because she was allowed to be the spark that made the fire. Different people learn in different ways. It takes a special teacher to know that. But it's especially amazing knowing how quickly Gerson was able to pick up on and nourish what made Susie special. Susie learns through doing, and she does out of an internal desire to protect and help others. That learning style fits the archetype of a traditional hero, and so was evident in the role she took and the way she first addressed him. Though, as we're about to find out, Gerson knows more about the prophecy than he lets on. And this is where we reach the ultimate test of Susie's character. Finding Gerson's sacred weapon, she assumes the old man will simply let her have it, out of a need to save the world. But Gerson has more important matters to attend to. He proposes a challenge for the axe, a simple haircut. But he doesn't make the challenge easy. In fact, he puts all of his power on full display. Susie is adamant that nothing can stop her because of the prophecy foretelling her success. But as Gerson's quick to point out, what happens in the middle of the story is far more variable than the end. Yet it's not really the prophecy that compels Susie forward. Even if he beats us, Susie will keep fighting to see through his challenge out of sheer determination, because that's what she's truly made of. Gerson reveals the extent of his knowledge on the prophecy, having adapted the story through his book. The beats aren't fully accurate to the main story we've been following, and yet they cover parts of the game we may have missed entirely. Though Susie remains oblivious to it, he is reinforcing how bendable the narrative can truly be, how even if we reach the same ending, what we impart from it can be widely different depending on what we do along the way there. And as he reaches the ending, any concept of prophecy begins to break down, because the next generation has yet to finish it. And that's what Susie is, the next generation, the one to burn a new trail. It was evident from the moment she stepped into the sanctuary. Now, more than anything else, the mentor sees it essential to train a student who will make a new world entirely. Susie is asked how she wants her story to end. She says she doesn't want the story to end at all, and that fascinates Gerson. As he puts it, she chooses eternity. She chooses a world where the differences she makes will last forever, where her life can lead off into an infinite unknown. And he only knows how true, yet impossible, that can be. Susie figures out the solution to his challenge, and she leaves with a mission clarified. With the door to the Knight's Lair opened, we say our goodbyes to the legend-old hermit. Susie assumes he'll just follow us out of the Dark World, but Gerson asks us to send his son a letter, knowing his situation to be more complicated than that. In addition, he reveals more to us about his thoughts on what Susie's exact role in the prophecy might be. She is the dragon. Susie isn't the hero with a view of the traditional narrative. Instead, it's her propensity to break the boundaries of her story that put her in that position. But whatever she'll be, Gerson tells her it will be tremendous. At the edge of the world, we open the Dark Fountain only to find another locked behind a passcode. And that's where the reality of it all sinks in. Looking for the code, Susie stumbles across a hammer bathed in dust, a reliquary that has yet to be fully grieved and buried. She puts two and two together. The man was dead all along. No wonder he put so much effort into befriending us. He only had one chance to make things right. And no wonder why he scoffed at eternity, because he knew no one could last forever. Yet, he allowed Susie to believe in her mission, for even if so, what Susie was truly asking for was a long and fulfilling life. That's what anyone should truly be after. And as someone looking back on a world left behind, it makes sense why Gerson carried so much wisdom. Hindsight is 20/20 after all. Susie finally realizes how much history is laden within the town itself, but now she has more questions than ever. Evaluating her options, Susie takes to heart the idea that she can make her future, and so she reopens a dark world. This world is nothing like the one she stumbled into. This one has been warped by the perspective of its imaginator, disorderly yet free. But it doesn't discourage our hero. Susie is more determined than ever, empowered by Gerson's training, yet more so, she's compelled by the role the prophecy gives to her. As she puts it, she's never really been picked for something before. So to be given such a giant responsibility, it feels like all of those times she was denied a future were building up to this. She can't let anyone down, she won't. And with the prophecy setting her future in stone, she feels invincible. Though she has yet to find any fate explicitly about her. This becomes an object of her fixation, as she digs deeper and deeper into the second sanctuary. She's desperate for a guide to her tomorrow, to guarantee the responsibility she's looking for. That consumes her, but as the light dims, the monkey's paw curls, and the darker side of the prophecy begins to reveal itself. At first, it gives her an even bigger open mystery. Love finds its way to the girl. She has no idea what that could mean, despite it being pretty obvious, and their identity casts a shadow over her mind. But it's in the search for Gerson that the darkest part of our journey, the ending, begins to leave its ugly mark. We see a prelude to the final fate before it's shattered by an external presence. We follow them, thinking it to be our mentor, and when found, we almost think we see a corpse. But when Rousey saves us, he clears things up. He tells us that undead lighteners are difficult for a Dark World to maintain, and in doing so, he reveals he knew Gerson's fate all along. He knows a lot about the prophecy, in fact, yet he has never told us what lies at the end. Susie calls him out for this, and Rousey is forced to admit his biggest fear. Rousey knows too much for his own good. He knows how it all ends, how sooner or later their lives will end. He sees all the unfortunate truths of his world, of our world, and it's all too uncomfortable to process. Rousey wants a normal life away from those truths, so he doesn't tell us unless he absolutely has to. Even now, he refuses to say it all, because while Susie sees the open road ahead, Rousey sees what lies a cliff at the edge of the horizon. Ultimately, the two are able to reconcile, as they always seem to, but it's fascinating how thesis and antithesis have swapped views over how far along their adventure they want to go, because now adventure becomes sacrifice. Leaving with the code, the three of us make our way towards the final Dark Fountain. The Knight tries everything possible to deter us, but we're all invested in bringing this story to a close. In giving all of our HP to its attacks, we're just barely able to reach them, right before they're able to escape. Susie tries to threaten them, but just as always, the wider world seems more complicated than we know. The Knight makes a demonstration of its power, and out from the smoke, a taste of our final confrontation emerges. The Titan, the nightmare behind the imaginative mind, the greatest challenge we'll ever face still in its infancy. And even in early development, its power far outweighs our own. But we're done giving up. We endure all that it has to give us, and even when it seems impossible to defeat, when we think we'll have to fight forever, even if it costs us our eternity, an old friend comes back to give us motivation, to set the dominoes in place one last time. Susie has come up with one last idea to defeat it, jumping straight into the center of its being. And right alongside us, she banishes an ultimate evil once and for all. Have we won? Is it over? Can anything even stand in our way anymore? It's hard to tell, though it won't be for long. We're left to close the final fountain. All that lies in our way is an empty hallway. Empty except for one thing. The final fate. In panic, Rousey tries to prevent Susie from seeing it, but he's too late. Even if we're the only ones not to know, its implications are all but evident. Sacrifice is demanded for the worlds to be saved. Susie's dream to eternity is challenged, for someone at least. The prophecy leads us to the cliff on the horizon. Susie is left to question a fate she can't allow for. And what does she do? What has all of her development over the last 4 chapters culminated in her doing? She rejects it. Susie rejects fate. And she does so through promising to protect others. It's the ultimate manifestation of all that she represented, everything she sought to do. She discards a certain future, and embraces the unknown. That's more or less where we sign off for now. Susie's determination to change fate is left up to our interpretation. Maybe it's naive, or maybe it speaks to a greater truth than we know. It could even be both in an odd way. But regardless, it's impossible to ignore the limitless potential that is her character at this point in time. Susie will continue to be antithesis for as long as she has control over the narrative, and that'll make a bigger impact as we approach the end of everything, mark my words. It's because of her need to make an impact that I feel Susie makes for such a compelling character. Her need to experiment with the unknown, to be an unknown, makes her the core of Deltarune's story, a heartbeat that makes it move, makes it alive. And that, to me, is the best possible way you can treat a character. I want to leave Deltarune chapters 3 and 4 with the idea that everyone has the freedom to make a difference, even when it seems impossible. Is this a lesson Toby Fox has in store for us? Maybe, probably not. But it's at least one side to what I find to be a deep philosophical conversation, given voice through an important character. And if I can leave here with that in mind, maybe Susie can, well and truly, be eternal. Thank you for watching. I've been Dots, and you've been patient. Thanks for that. If you like what you've heard, feel free to check out other videos of mine, or at the moment, the other one video I've made so far. And stick around till the end of this video, it'll be over soon. For now, Have a great day, and always be creative.